Good morning, friends. And we are so happy that you are here with us this morning. I woke up in a brisk temperature. This is brisk for me. So
It's a little cold for you, huh?
it's a little chilly.
Was it a little cold for you this morning?
I like it.
Okay.
All right. My name is Ursula Hauser, and we have our guest Andrea here.
Yes,
and
so excited.
we're gonna jump right into our talk with her. But I just wanted to extend a blessing to you this morning, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Know that God sees you and He hears you, and we are so happy you joined us. So, my dear friend Rebecca.
That was so great. Ursula, I love this. I'm really excited to be here as well. My name is Rebecca Hanley, and we are getting to be a part of this online, if this is your first morning here, to be able to connect in a different way. And so we have special guests here to interview, so check in. So before every service, we're doing this, and we get to meet with Andrea, right?
Yeah.
Hey.
So
The best.
I mean,
Girl, yeah.
yes. kind of a big deal.
So Andrea, we have this list of things. I've never met you before. This is my first time meeting you this morning, and I am really excited. As I was reading over some of the things that you are doing, I just thought, oh my gosh, who is this lady? And how did you tell us a little bit of your story? Tell us who you are, how you got there, where you were born. Like, tell us a little
Tell us
bit
everything right now.
Within, you have 3 minutes. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, before we jump to what you're doing now, how did you get there? What are you doing? So first, let's say this. What's your title? What do you do right now? What's your title and how you got there?
So I have several titles. I am, in terms of Vineyard, I am both I'm one of the pastors, founding pastors, church planter at Neighborhood Abbey Vineyard, which is a micro church. And we just launched in April of this year. And I'm also a seminary chaplain now. At Fuller Seminary, which is also my alma mater.
Wow.
And that's a fairly new role.
Oh.
But I've been a chaplain. Previous to that, I was a hospital chaplain for over a decade.
Yeah.
And so I was in that role for a very long time, and just came out of that. Like, there was a time where there was a little bit of an overlap between the hospital chaplaincy and the seminary chaplaincy, kind of a discernment period, and then went into the seminary chaplaincy full time.
Okay.
So really happy with that. I'm also a spiritual director.
Which I know that Ursula over here is going to want to tap into, talk
we'll
a little bit
about that.
Yeah. So those are 3 of the main sort of ministry titles or labels. Yeah.
Which is huge. So have you always felt called? So going back to talking about you, how you got there, your story, finding the vineyard in those ways. How would you tell that to us this morning?
Yeah. So I haven't always felt called. I feel like I felt a calling as early as like around 1999.
Okay.
And at that time, I wasn't in Vineyard. I was at a non-denominational church. I was very immersed in the Black church at that point at Faithful Central Bible Church, Inglewood, California, with Bishop Ulmer. And but I was really resistant to the call to pastor specifically. Even though I was at a church that was very affirming of women in ministry, I was, patriarchy is serious, right? And so I think that, and very pervasive and very...
That's a good word.
I think we're so steeped in it. I think it's like, we're like fish in water when it comes to patriarchy. So I think that there was so much about that I just didn't understand why I was pushing back. So it took a long time to kind of really embrace the call. So I, honestly, in many ways, it's why I went into chaplaincy first.
Okay.
And so not to say that the call to chaplaincy wasn't real and authentic.
Yeah.
But I believe that God used it as an on-ramp, as like kind of like this sweet, like easy on-ramp that I would like accept.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And do you think, can I just ask you a question? Do you think some of that hesitancy and feeling this call or this resistance is because it's not what you saw? It wasn't a normal thing like, oh, I see how they on-ramped as a woman. This is how you do it. There wasn't much, was there, for in your life, women that were doing what you were doing?
Yeah. I mean, and I think there wasn't much. It wasn't as modeled as and there still isn't. I mean, if we're honest, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the church at large was at the time. I mean, this is the '90s, early aughts.
Yeah.
We were still pushing that umbrella with, with those that umbrella diagram, and so you were still like, women were still largely, those headship roles were still largely being pushed. And so that's what you were seeing as like, this is really the thing. And so women, like the woman in ministry piece was, kind of very much like the exceptionality, like, oh yeah, that can happen, right?
Yeah.
And not just that, but the cultural thing. I mean, I grew up in the Black church. My granddaddy was a preacher,
right.
And we were there. We were on time, and we sat in the front row. And I wore a dress. And I got to tell you guys, to this day, I don't walk up the front of the stairs at getting onto the stage. So it's like steeped in you when you talk.
You go
about
up the back side. You go up the back. I've noticed that, but now I didn't know why. I thought you needed the ramp or something. I don't know.
Look,
listen.
Because somewhere my granddaddy will like jump out and be like,
look. The ancestors, because the chip is activated.
It's deep.
Yes.
It's deep. And so not only, being a woman, but being a Black woman, there's a lot of kind of just these stereotypical roles that we get to fill. And so to press like around that is both challenging but there is encouragement, like if you find it.
Yes.
And so tell us more. What's your vineyard story? How'd you get here?
Yeah. So my vineyard story is kind of wild because the only reason I'm at Vineyard is because of my sister and my brother-in-law. So my sister messed around and fell in love.
Oh, hey.
And so she married my brother-in-law. They've now been together for over 30 years.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And they're here somewhere this weekend.
Really?
They've been pastoring Vineyard churches for also that whole time.
Oh, my goodness.
So they're the reason that I was introduced to Vineyard and actually really introduced to Christ at around like 14, 15.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And so through Vineyard, at the Vineyard Anaheim, actually.
Yeah.
Anaheim.
Yeah. I got to like
what year was that? I don't know why I asked, because I'm trying to see where I'm at.
She got me over here telling my age.
Yeah,
folks.
okay, never mind.
Ooh-wee, no.
I was like, was I there? Did we like walk around each other? You just
We probably did.
It's
Yeah, no, because I would have been, that would have been in the, carry the one.
Yeah, you're
so,
good.
yeah, it was
You're good.
90,
Yeah.
97.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yep. So like I got to hear
Love it.
Wimber like preach, but I didn't know that I was getting to hear
Sure,
because I was like a silly teenager. But so that was the time that I was introduced to Christ. So I was there regularly with them, and but still like I was just a baby Christian. Once they got married and had their firstborn, they ended up moving up to the Central Valley here in California.
Okay.
Because that's where my brother-in-law is from, and so they moved up here. So I stopped attending, because at that point I was in college or I was entering college, I think, and so it just was time, So and I just kind of, I wasn't mature enough to like continue on my own.
Yeah.
So I kind of just did my own thing for a while. Then when I went back into church, I really wanted to explore my own roots. So, and context.
Yeah.
I'm adopted, so my family's white.
Okay.
And so, so I didn't exactly fit in
Yeah.
at the Vineyard Anaheim.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so ended up at Faithful Central.
Okay.
And so again, that's kind of like where my own, like, that's where I really like began to like own my faith, whatever. So I stayed in those Black church circles for a long time. That's a much more, that's for another.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole other interview. Like that's a whole other. That's a book, y'all.
Yeah,
that's a book, y'all.
I bet.
I'd read that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's in here. It's in here. It's coming. So, but ultimately, when it came time to leave that space, God called me back to the vineyard.
Wow.
When it came time to plant, and kind of like, God called me back to the vineyard. And so, in 2018, I came back.
Wow.
So
were you doing, so were you were talking about you were a chaplain, right? And doing some of that. Was that over the course of the last couple years as well that you were a chaplain? Were you in the hospitals? What was that?
I was a full-time chaplain in the hospital setting, beginning in 2010.
Okay.
And up through the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. What was that like?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Great. I loved hospital chaplaincy. I was at a trauma center, and so I was the emergency room chaplain, and I loved it. I love my shout out to my emergency room nurses and doctors. They're my favorite people on the planet. They're rough and they're gruff and they're amazing and they're compassionate and I wouldn't trade those years and those experiences and that ministry for the world. Like they are, it was a great time. The pandemic was heartbreaking.
Sure.
And we, as healthcare workers and as frontline workers and as chaplains, saw war level amounts of death.
Yeah.
And so, like no one can prepare you for that. Like you can prepare for chaplaincy, and there's a lot of like great training programs that you can do to figure out and like prepare your heart for like the world of chaplaincy and healthcare chaplaincy in particular.
Sure.
But yeah, there's just no training program for a pandemic that is killing people at the levels that we saw.
Sure.
And you were on the front lines as well with them, and talk about a calling and to remember why you're doing what you're doing.
Holding
and
space for people in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that space, because you talked a little bit about, spiritual development, and some like how were you able to just hold on in that? Because I feel like in some of us, it's like whatever you knew, you just had to grab on tight and hold on for the ride in some ways, and really going, God, where are you? In this, but also just thinking about just how God has brought you through this journey of continuing to be on the front lines in so many ways of things that people haven't seen, and where you are today even. How did you get, what's that foundation for you? What was that thing? Am I making sense what that question?
Yeah.
What was that thing for you?
I think I had a great spiritual director.
Yeah.
I have a great spiritual, shout out Betsy Cerrone in Texas.
Hi.
I like
Betsy.
Love it. How long did you,
let me jump in there. So I'm actually going through Sustainable Faith. I'm year 2.
Yeah, congratulations.
So I saw that.
Yeah.
What year did you graduate? Sustainable Faith is a spiritual direction training school. And so it was started by Vineyard pastors, if I'm correct. And it's kind of branched out into different streams of faith. And I did have a question around spiritual direction and just all of that. You know, as a person of color, I find that spiritual direction, any type of therapy, like reaching out for help, like culturally, it's not something that we do.
It's not.
And so that has been like this big thing. And like even just in my family, I've been pursuing it. And my mom and dad are supportive of whatever I do.
Yeah.
But like you be a supermodel, which is just not in the cards, girl. But you know, they tell me I can.
Still can be, yes. They're great parents.
Very super supportive to Betty Jean and Charlie Ray. But so what was that experience in for you as a person, a woman of color, moving through that school? And
it's a great question, Ursula.
Yeah. I was my first year, there was me and one other Black woman. Unfortunately, she dropped out, and then it was just me. So I do think that we are underrepresented in that in those circles. But it was good. I feel like I am constantly trying to bring more of us into those spaces, whether it be people who I see who are gifted in that way to do spiritual direction. Actually, one of my one of my co-planters is looking into doing sustainable faith. There's actually a Black cohort that's coming up soon, and so she's looking into that, and also people to just simply participate as directees.
Yeah, that is awesome.
So, and especially being at Fuller Seminary, there's so many just beautiful seminary students who are my next favorite group of people on the planet, next to emergency room people. I love seminary students, and there's just they're very open to spiritual disciplines and contemplative practices, which I think are part of the centering that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And so, I think exposing them to those resources and ways to tap into what the Holy Spirit has available to us is really helpful.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that you're passionate about holding space for people and making room for people at the table in an authentic and a clear way. And I love that. And I think as women of color, the way we do that is just by showing up as our authentic selves.
Yes.
For sure. So we're going to close up, but I do have 2 questions for you. Not related to spiritual direction or churchy things at all, but what are you listening to? What's the soundtrack you're listening to right now?
Ooh. Oh gosh, am I listening to any time? You know, I don't listen to the radio at all. I just I'm usually listening to whatever is on my whatever playlist I have. Sure. So usually it's either old school 90s hip hop.
Okay. Someone was trying to do a little hip hop earlier.
I was, but it was not good.
Okay.
But we won't repeat that.
Oh, okay. We'll leave that alone. So if it's on, it's usually Tribe Called Quest or something along those lines. Yeah.
Nice. And then what's your coffee drink? How do you take your coffee?
This right here is a grande, non-fat white mocha with no whip.
Okay.
And with oat milk. Oat milk is my new favorite.
Oh, I love oat milk.
gosh.
I just discovered that as well.
No, it tastes like grass.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, Rebecca doesn't
Okay,
agree.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
strong, firm stance. Firm stance.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a kind of. Yeah. There are so many beautiful things about what we could talk about, and I'm really sad we're wrapping. It was so quick.
It was. I'm sorry.
Nope.
But so, again, we just want to remind you guys that we are here 20 minutes before every meeting, and we're going to jump into worship next.
Yeah.
And we're just so glad that you're with us. And just remember that we are going to be online and in the chats. And so if you want prayer for anything, you can reach out that way.
That's right.
And we're going to be back.
All right.
We'll see you in a bit.
All right. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
So good.
So
Oh my
good.
gosh. want to be your friend. You can be my friend.